Students, good morning and welcome in Level 4 Organizational Behavior class. Today we will discuss information and communication in organizations. Let me share the slides with you first. Lecture 2, Information and Communication in Organizations. Um, After today's lecture, you will be able to understand the role of information in organizations. You will be able to know how perception operates and what are the barriers to perceptions. You will be able to be aware of the implications and limitations created by information being symmetrically distributed in the organization. You will be able to identify the constraints and errors produced by attribution mechanism. You will also understand how perception, asymmetries, and attribution influence information processing in organizations. You will be able to distinguish the impact of interpersonal communication forms on information flows in the organization. And you will put all of the factors influencing information flows together and understand the overall structure of communication as well as its complexity. Actually, this in this chapter, we will discuss what is information, how it is communicated in organizations, how it is created, and how it is sent and perceived, and what are the barriers to communications. And these will be discussed in the with following headings discussing learning outcomes. Now, first we will see what is information in an organization. Information is fact provided or learned about something or someone. This is fact. Fact are elements about anything in an organization. Each time anyone in an organization does anything, there is information involved. An inflow of an information is always needed, and that flow is always active. Once a decision is made, it is needed to be communicated to whoever is relevant audience. This happens at many levels in and between organizations. It may be person to person, team to team, and company to company, and messages are communicated and information transmitted. We can see it here from this diagram. Communication from organizational entities, communication from other entries, and here it is the process how they understand process other and within the organization, and these are the elements that contribute to this. When during the process, what first comes the perception, how you perceive what type of a message it will be, or and then agency, sense making, attributions, and here it is uh, communication, maybe interpersonal communication, organizational, or what are its patterns are. We will discuss all these elements in the next slides. Perception. What is perception? Perception is a cognitive process that enables us to interpret and understand our environment. It is about how we view the world and adds meaning to the information gathered via the five senses. Um, we all perceive the world around us differently. These perceptions influence our current and future behavior. For example, entrepreneurial minded people have low risk perceptions than associated with starting up ventures compared to less entrepreneurial people, because they have experience and they know what type of danger they will have to face. But the newcomers who start a new business, they don't know about the danger. They're like they can't perceive, they can't check, judge in advance dangers associated to that venture. We will see what is perceived target. First thing comes perceived target, the thing you are going to discuss or you are going to work on, and it is discussed in two headings. Under two headings: attention drawing features. These are novelty, brightness, dominating in visual field. The perceived target, the thing you are working on, what are its attributes or characteristics, and these are novelty, brightness, dominant, color, clothing, and Grouping, from which group it belongs, like continuity, closure, proximity, similarity, and perceiver. These are the qualities of perceivers, characteristic, personality, gender, mood, implicit personality theories. We will discuss all these under perceivers category. And here it is setting the stage where you work on like this, and where you create an environment and you work on the perception. And we will discuss this under contrast effect, culture, and primacy effect. Perceived target always influence perceiver and leaves impression. First impression is influenced by person's skin color, gender, hairstyle, clothes, and so on. For example, an inquiry was found that criminal suspects were perceived as more violent and aggressive when they dressed in black. Yes, this perception is set up that like the criminal minded people may be more violent when they wear the black or dark color dresses. This is perception, and it is perceived on the experience of different events, previous events. The target of perception. What is the target of perception? Several principles of perceptual grouping explain why we perceive objects as well organized pattern rather separate component parts. Perceptual grouping is set of tendencies to form individual stimuli into meaningful pattern. The main factors that determine perceptual grouping are continuity, closure, proximity, and similarity. And we will discuss it here. These are the characteristics of perceived objective. People and events are of great importance in the formation of perception. Perceptual grouping, and these are the four contributing factors that contribute to perceptual grouping. We will discuss what is these are. Continuous, the tendency to perceive objects in continuous pattern. Continuity, how the continuity, it is the perception, it is already made that and you continue that this thing belongs to that characteristic and that category. Closure is the tendency to perceive object as a constant overall form. Proximity is when elements are grouped together on the basis of their nearness. Similarity is the tendency to group objects, people, and events that look alike. Now, next we will see the setting, how the targets are set. The setting in which the interaction between perceiver and perceived target take place. It is the stage where perceiver, the person who is going to perceive, and uh, at the perceived target, the thing that is going to be target. It is the interaction and influence, the setting in which the interaction between perceiver and perceived target takes place influence the perception. The following factors affect perception. These, when you are going to make a perception, these four things may affect: contrast effect, national culture, primacy effect, anchoring. Contrast effect, the tendency to perceive stimuli, the thing that stimulate you to think about that, differ from expectations and being more different than they really are. It was considered that in different way, and it may be in reality a different one. National culture, the norm, behavior, beliefs, and custom existing in population of sovereign nation also affect in setting up the perception. Primacy fact, the effect by which the information first received often continue to color later perception of individuals. And anchoring, a decision bias linked to the primacy effect, the effect you receive first, and the decision you link to that primacy, where initial information colored all subsequent information, and you think that it may be like this one, and the remaining all the events will be affected by that initial perception you set up. The perceiver, who the person who perceives. Characteristics of perceiver may explain why the same event, person, or object is perceived differently. Men and women seem to have a different perception of which social sexual behavior they consider harassment. People have the tendency to seek and interpret information that varies existing beliefs, confirmation bias. These are the characteristic, and they say that women and men, they perceive things differently. They have the different tendency to perceive things. Evidence about perception. Here is an evidence. They say basic research on perception deals with the interaction between stimuli, psychological response, and perceptual response. Uh, this is the example. In one study, job seekers with facial piercing were perceived as less suitable and as having more negative characteristic than applicants without piercing. It is considered that the people with the face piercing, they have the low capacity to do a work. They are considered less effective, and it is generally perceived after the experience. It may be wrong in different scenarios and different cultures, but generally it is perceived this one. Students, now we will discuss agency and symmetric information. Symmetric, that is not symmetrical, that is not the same, that differs. Different information that differs from the original one. Asymmetric information or lacking symmetry can come in two possible ways, depending upon the information known at the moment of taking the decision. Yes. When you take a decision, any information that come to you, if it is a clear one, you can take the relative decision correctly. But if something is hidden, there it may affect. We will see now. Now we will see how and why symmetric information occurs. uh, Deals, agreement, accord, that both explicit and implicit are made all the time in an organization. These agreements are made, and they are different things are explained in it. Parties wanting to maximize benefit to themselves is a reasonable assumption, and between these treaty agreements, if any company wants to get more and want to get hidden benefits, they will hide information. They will hide something from the other party, and it will affect. Emphasizing positive information and hiding unfavorable facts may occur. Let's see the example: adverse selection, and it happens in two ways: adverse selection and moral hazards. Adverse selection, it happens when one party in a transaction has information that the other party does not have. Yes, the party that wants to take the advantage, party will hide information from the others, and other party will definitely be affected by that. Classic example of adverse selection is the consequences that asymmetric information has in the market for used car. Used car, a person who is selling a car, a used car, he hides some attributes related to that car. He does not tell some defects related to the car. He hides. He sells, and when it is sell again, yes, the party will hide. They will not, and it is generally perceived that while selling used cars, this adverse selection works. And moral hazard. What are the moral hazard? Moral hazard are hidden action occurs when one party to the transaction take risk, and the cost of the risk is carried by the other party. Here, moral hazard is when one party takes risk while negotiating any agreement, and the cost is bear by the other party. We will see how in organization moral hazard occur in number of situations. Employees act on behalf of the organization but don't carry the risk of other actions, and to some extent they do carry the risks, in the sense if they do take on a risk and gamble failed, they might be blamed. They say workers or employees work in an organization but they don't take risk, and in some cases if they take risk, they will hide it. They will not come in the front after the failure of the task. And how you can check this moral hazard? Monitoring is required all the time. Monitoring, but it is very costly. Always you have to monitor, and you have to spend extra money and resources to monitor that situation. And comprehensive monitoring members of organization is costly. Some formal information is common, e.g. clocking in. Clocking in, when you clock in at the time, you can get information that from the system of clocking in. Team leader or managers can get information about the employees, but most of the time, it does not work. Information monitored by co-workers. It is also monitored by the co-workers. If work gets done inside the allocated time, managers may never know how long it really takes and what the employees does if there is time to spare. If the workers complete the time within the specific period, manager will not be able to judge or check how they did the work, or whether they took a risk, or they did it in a normal situation. Evidence about symmetric information, the practicality, or here we will check the practicality of the symmetric information. Evidence about adverse selection mechanism at work inside organization is very rare. In one study, the adverse selection model can be used to explain why projects are sometimes continued despite indication that they are failing. And evidence about moral hazard caused by hidden action is also difficult to come by, may exist in a structure of top managers' pay. Students, now we will discuss what is attribution and its role in information. Attribution, attribution are cognitive evaluation that attempts to formulate, explain for an event, such as success or failure in an achievement-oriented task. And we will see why do people act or behave the way they do. Many try to understand why people are acting or behaving in a certain way. And under attribution, we try to understand why the uh, action of the worker and the person who acts. And attributions here are what we infer from that: inferred causes of someone's behavior and cognitive evaluation to explain an event. So we inferred causes of someone's behaviors, and we explain those causes. And here we will discuss, you can see control under these two factors: controllable attribution dimensions and uncontrollable attribution dimensions. Attribution dimensions that can be controlled. It may be internal and external. Internal is typical effort. Internal is typical effort. A person puts an effort. It may be typical effort usually regularly used. And unstable is intermediate effort. If he puts low efforts, it will be an intermediate effort. External, it may be external, who can check or who can judge is supervisor. And unstable, co-worker, they can check co-worker. Types of attribution: locus of causality, controllability, and stability. These are the stable efforts, unstable effort, and the factors who are checking are internal. You can check internally, and external, supervisor or co-workers can check, and they can check whether you have put proper energy in the work, proper you followed the proper rules, and you did this task properly, or you are not serious in the task. And uncontrollable attribution dimension: internal and external. Stability, instability. Internal internal it is one's uh, ability to work, ability to do a job. And unstable is its mood, one's mood. External, task. Student, we are discussing attributions. We have already discussed this in controllable attribution dimensions or uncontrollable attribution dimensions. Under uncontrollable attribution dimensions, one is internal, one is external, and its effect may be checked under whether it was stable or unstable. And we will internal is one's ability to perform, and unstable is mood. Mood can change according to the situation. External is task difficulty. The task difficulty, the hurdle that comes to the work, and unstable is luck. If whether you are a luck, we will explain this here. Internal causes of behavior concern factor with the actor, while external causes are situated outside the actor's control. For example, someone who fails to set statistic exam can attribute this result to misfortune or task difficulty. If someone fails the statistic exam, he can say that it was because of misfortune or task difficulty. This one is external cause, because the external cause did not support. But if artificial intelligence mood or lack of preparation, these are his mood, his lack of preparation, these are the internal causes that affect someone's uh, performance. And here we will discuss attribution theories. Now we will discuss, there are two main theories that relates to the attribution work. Now we will discuss two theories that contributes in attribution. One is correspondence inference theory, other is covariation principle theory. Correspondence inference theory, it describes how an alert perceiver infers another intention and personal disposition from his or her behavior. Students, sorry for the external noise. Now we will resume again. We are discussing attribution theories, and two theories. One is correspondence inference theory. Correspondence inference theory deals and describes how an alert perceiver infers another person's intentions and personal disposition from his or own behavior. How an alert perceiver perceives from his behavior others' action, his and also his own actions. How we use another person's behavior for inferring their stable disposition. For example, your friend likes to help others. Consequently, you might infer that she has altruistic personality because of her helpful behavior. You have, if someone helps others, you may immediately you will perceive that he has the tendency to help others. That is why she or he is doing that one. And other is covariation principle theory, state that for a factor to be the cause of a behavior, it must be present when the behavior occurs and absent when it does not. Covariant theory that cause must be present when something happens, and it should not be when something does not happen. And attribution is based on the consensus, distinctness, and consistency of observed behavior. And it says attribution is always based on consensus. You can't make it on your own behalf. There should be consensus and distinctness. This should be an events are distinct to other events are like this. It should not be the general one. And consistency and continuous observation is required for this. Now we will discuss sense making or making sense, how it is made. Sense making is often described as a process in which an important element of sense making are cues or signals from the environment. It is a process, and process starts from the cue. It gives hint, then the process starts. An important element of sense making is a cue or signal from the environment. A cue triggers sense making, which triggers action, and action generates new information in the form of new causes. Process goes on. Cue, it triggers sense making, which triggers action. First you make a sense, then you take decide action, and when you take action, a new information comes, and this way the whole process continues and the informations are generated. Sense making as information processing, how it is processed. What is the difference between sense making and information processing activities? We will discuss here. Sense making linked to people's identities and where they fit within the organization. Sense making linked to people's identities, what is their role, what are their position, and at which position they are working in an organization. Sense making, it creates this one. And organization that apply sense making methods may be able to obtain a clearer picture of what is important to members. Also, if cues are present and they don't trigger sense making, individuals and organizations may continue as usual despite the existence of cues suggested otherwise. They say always you make a sense if cues are available and cues trigger. If they don't trigger, then the situation remains same and you can't create a new sense. Students, we have already discussed what is information. Now we will see the process how it is processed information in an organization, information processing in organizations. And we have to discuss that some stages, and we have to look how it works. Stage one is selective attention comprehension. First stage, you will select the things you are going to discuss. You are going to create an information on it. Second stage, you will give them codes, you will give them name. And the third stage is you will store and retain the information in your memory and retrieve and response. And fourth stage is you will bring it out from your memory and you will act upon it. These four stages are involved in information processing. First, selective attention. When you take after creating cues, when you take select attention comprehension, what you do, you competing environmental stimuli, you compete with the environment, external or internal within the organization, and also you think about outside the organization. And you look upon the people, events, and objects. Selective attention, you take attention upon people, events, and objects. And in the second stage, after this, when taking this action, you give names, or you generate code and you give names to that action that you have taken. Interpretation and categorization, you interpret and categorize that information. And in the third stage, when it is categorized, you stored it in your memory or your device's memory. And when you apply it, judgment and decisions, it is called retrieval and response. Stage one, selective attention and encoding. Here we will discuss two stages, selective attention and encoding, how it works. Attention is the process of becoming consciously aware of something or someone. People selectively perceive subsets of stimuli. Attention is the process of becoming consciously aware of something or someone, always plays a role. Can be focused on information either from the environment or from memory. Yes, we have already discussed in the diagram. Now here it is explained that how you can do this encoding. And after that, encode after attention, next step is encoding. Here raw information is interpreted and translated into mental representation. Perceiver assign names such as animal, dog, man, to things you are going to code. You give names to them, to that information. And then storage and retention. This phase involves storage of information in long-term memory. Long-term memory consists of separate but related categories. Information passes between these categories, and long-term memory is made up of three compartments containing categories of information about events, semantic material, and people. And we will discuss those in next. Retrieval and response. What is retrieval and response? People retrieve information from memory when they make judgment and decision. Our judgment and decisions are either based on the process of drawing on, interpreting, and integrating information stored in the long-term memory, or on retrieving a summary judgment that was already made. In this heading, we have discussed how information is processed. First, you select you select a thing, then you object, you are going to work, then you take action, you restore memory, and then you retrieve and apply it uh, in the work of the organization. Now we will discuss interpersonal communication. What is interpersonal communication? Uh, Communication that is between the people and the people, and within the organization, and between within the organization and groups. There are two form. These are formal and informal. And formal one is verbal, verbal or oral, and written. Verbal, what is verbal? Presentations mostly one way. These are verbal, that someone is going to present something, it is verbal. Group discussion, it may happen in the group discussions. You are going to discuss an important issue, and you discuss in a group, face to face, one by one. Face to face is one by one to discuss things. And written it may be letters. Generally letters are sent, and this is the most common. Letters, emails, these are the most common tools used for communication. Meeting minutes, manuals, reports, these are all made within the organizational work. And non-verbal communication, what is non-verbal communication? It is body movements and gestures. You don't use any source like email or like this, or letters or voice message, but it is just body movements. You hint from the body movement and gestures. Touch, you can touch and you can communicate the message. Facial expression, you also from facial expressions you can convey the message. If you are happy, your face will be different. If you have a angry mood, it is different, and the perceiver may perceive from the facial expression. Eye contact, by making eye to eye contact, you can tell the story, convey the message. And here, these are the moods: assertiveness, aggressiveness, and non-assertiveness. While communication are these things work. Assertive, what is assertive? Pushing hard without attacking. Aggressive, taking advantage of the others, and self in chatting others' expense. Aggressive. And assertive is pushing hard without attacking. You push someone to do this. This is important. Please assert. You push someone do this one. Aggressive. You aggressively behave and say do this. It always results some negative results. Non-assertive, encouraging others to take advantage of himself or herself. These are three situations: assertive, aggressive, and non-assertive. Application of interpersonal communication. How we can apply these interpersonal communication? It will describe the situation. You will express your feeling and the impact the other behavior has on you. Empathize, you will empathize, and you can understand, feel what is other the position of other person's position, and in this way you can convey a message in a proper way. You can negotiate changes with the other person. Indicate in a non-threatening way the possible consequences. You can indicate how to these are the things that can be used to avoid aggressiveness, assertiveness, and like this. This is practically you can act upon. These are the emphasize, you can understand and feel, and others position and negotiate things with, indicate a non-threatening way the possible consequences. If it is good, if it done properly, it has positive, and not if it is not done properly, maybe it has negative. You can indicate this way. Summarize the agreed action, making expectations clear. You can summarize the thing, and you can make the expectation clear to the workers. Now we will discuss the application of interpersonal communication. Interpersonal, between the person communication, how it works. Saying no. It says don't say no. Don't start to apologetic way, and keep it brief and simple. Be clear that you refuse the request. Use appropriate nonverbal behavior, and make use of the broken record technique. It says don't start with no like this, and don't be apologetic. You should be clear, and you can convey it through a proper way. Hierarchical communication. Hierarchical communication is that goes from downward to upwards, or from upwards to downward. It comes hierarchical in stages. Hierarchical communication, what is it? Downward exchange of information between supervisors. Downward exchange of information between supervisor, its supervisor, and employees, from employee to supervisor. And upward exchange of information, it is done for two purposes. Hierarchical communication, it comes from upward to lower level, from the manager or supervisor to co-workers. And co-workers are the workers, they provide information to team leader, supervisor, and it goes to manager, and then to the other higher uh, members of the organization. Problems, there are, it may create a problem, and it may be not be effective, and because of lack of communication. Information leaks, maybe information leaks, and some interested objects involved in that, and they created wrong information, and maybe it is not communicated in a proper way, or it lacks the way it should be provided. Students, now we will discuss another element, the grapevine. The grapevine information. Grapevine. What is grapevine? Grapevine is an informal, unofficial, and personal communication channel or system that takes place within the organization as a result of rumor and gossips. It is complex web of oral information, and it lacks and authenticity sometimes also. You can see from this, it goes from each person to persons, or gossip one person to all members, or each randomly tells to other people. This is the way gossip goes on. Unofficial communication system of the information within an organization. This is the unofficial system of information within the organization, and its patterns are liaison individual versus organizational, modes are informats. It works between the liaison officers whose duties are to interlink and generate links, and to provide information to others, and also the some informants organization hires or some interested people who gather the information. These are the uh, uh, people who gather the information, and they exchange with others, or they communicate to others. And evidence about communication patterns. So now we will see practicality of this whole communication, whether it was helpful, not, its utility, and how it worked in the organization. We have discussed in the previous slide. Now we will see the main elements. Employees tend to engage in communication distortion because of workplace politics. Sometimes workplace politics also affects communication, and interested actors or elements can distort the fact, and they can add some additional things in the communication. Employees also tend to modify or distort information when they aspire to move upwards and when they don't trust their supervisor. Employees also they distort information because when they have their own interests and they want to get some promotions and they don't trust on their supervisors, they distort information, and it will not be helpful for the organizations in some extent. The grapevine is faster than formal channel. The grapevine, it spreads immediately and within the organization than the proper information setup. The informal social network employees have expanded significantly, making it possible to gossip to anyone and not just to your own social network. And it spread to other networks, social networks, and it spreads very quickly. These are the grapevine uh, communication side effects, that how it creates sometime misunderstanding, and it spreads immediately within the groups in the form of gossips and also to the social media. Students, now we will discuss the perceptual process model of communication. We have discussed this in the previous slide. Now we will discuss separate slide to get more information, and we will discuss under different categories. A perceptual process model of communication. So it has sender and then encoding and message and selecting a medium. We have already discussed in how information is created in the organizations from queue to processing, and then fact is generated, then it is stored, and then it is applied. Here we will see sender, individual or group that desires or attempts to communicate with their receiver. Encoding, it translates mental thoughts into a code or language that can be understood by others. Message, output of encoding, the message that comes from after the encoding. Selecting a medium, method used to communicate with the receiver. You use the method, which method you will use to communicate with the receiver. It may be letter, it may be email, it may be verbal communication. A perceptual process continues, and now we will discuss decoding, how it works. Receiver converts a message into a form that can be interpreted, is a key contributor to misunderstanding in communication. How you decode and think about it is a key contributor to misunderstanding in communication. Noise interference with the understanding message. Noise can also, because because of noise, you could not understand the properly, and you uh, uh, coded that one, and after that you spread it to other channels, and it affected. Just like outside, when I was recording, there was a motorbike noise outside, and it was creating problem. This one also creates problem. The communication takes place on two levels: general level and relationship level. General level, no, sorry, communication takes place on two level: content level and relationship level. Content level, the people who are working at a certain place to work, and they are dealing with an issue at that level, content level. And relationship level, how it goes up or outside in the form of relationship. It may be official or non-official. And now we will discuss the barriers related to effective communication. What is process barrier? Involve all components of the perceptual model of communication. Barrier, these are the barriers. Sender barriers, if someone is sending information and he could not send properly or he had something, it will affect. Encoding barrier, when you are encoding, if you will do it wrongly, it may, and if you could not do it properly, it will affect. Message barrier, when the message was created and it was delivered or not delivered properly, it is also a barrier. Medium barrier, and the way it was sent, the channel through it was sent, is it may also create a problem. Decoding barrier, when you are decoding the decoding it, you could not decode it properly, and it was also created problem. And feedback barrier, if you did not collect the response of the others about that event or like the feedback, it may also create problem. Personal barrier. These are personal barrier. What are the personal barrier? It belongs to one's personal capabilities, the ability to effectively communicate, the way people process and interpret information, the level of interpersonal trust between people, the existence of stereotypes and prejudices, the egos of the people communicating, the ability to listen, the natural tendency to evaluate or judge sender's message, the inability to listen with understanding. These are the personal barriers. It may be from sender and receivers from both sides that they have, sometimes they don't have the capability to understand, or they have less capability. It may affect sometimes egos also. Egos also affect someone's ego, may also affect in processing this information. These are the personal barriers. And semantic barriers. The semantic barrier related to language, meaning in language or logic. It relates to the different understanding and interpretation of words we use to communicate and strategies to improve communication. It is related to the language we use or we understand. And these are empathy, redundancy, effective timing, effective timing, descriptive, feedback, and ask questions. These are the empathy. Empathy, you could not understand the position of the receiver. If you want to remove this barrier, you should put yourself on the receiver's position and understand the message. Redundancy, repeat the major elements being no longer useful or needed. Say what you are going to say it again, and you can remove this barrier. Effective timing, maybe effective timing, it was not a proper time to send a message. You should choose a proper time to send a message, time when the receiver will not be distracted by external elements like noise. And descriptive, it should be descriptive one should focus on the problem, not on person. Yes, it should be descriptive one. Feedback is also a barrier, like use feedback to check whether your message has been received and reach its intended recipient. In this way you can remove this barrier, feedback barrier, and how it can be removed we discuss. Ask questions also, it is a barrier, and sum up meetings, explore the world sides, ideas, objectives, concern, and so on. And in this way you can add to the situation, and you can remove this barrier also. Physical barrier pertain to the physical distance. This barrier, it may be because of physical distance, physical barrier, physical distance. And what are they? Work and office noise, poor telephone lines, crashed computers, distracting walls. These are the physical barriers in communication. And work and office noise. Yes, if at a workplace and in an office there is a lot of noise, maybe it may affect the communication, and message may not be will not be communicated in a clear way. Poor telephone lines, if the telephone is not working properly, or it will affect the message. Crashed computer is not working, computer stop working urgently, it will also affect the communication. Distracting walls, if the walls are too high, you want to convey a message, you can or the walls are not the proper one to be used in the organization or workplace, you can turn down those walls or adjust it to remove this barrier. These were the barriers, physical barriers. Students, this is what we were discussing. We have discussed what is information, how it is created and communicated in the organizations. Thanks for being with me. Bye.